What makes me optimistic is my positive attitude towards life. I always see the world with eyes full of joy and love. And I truly believe in the power of human connection.
Love makes me optimistic. Love and community, whether it is a connection with the natural world, with our families and our local community, whether it is connection out in the world beyond.
Hope, for me, is the biggest ingredient for optimism.
Perfect.
My mom is a very happy person. I think it's our DNA is like that. The positiveness in all the things come to my family. It's our DNA. You're always smiling. It's like
Optimism is the evidence for dreams not yet realized. So welcome, Cynthia, welcome, Cheryl, welcome other friends, and welcome, Lenita from Brazil. We've got a wonderful group of people joining us today, and we can see on the non-video participants, there are people from the Americas and people from Asia, so we're quite a mixed group of people. So the first question we always ask in the Centre for Optimism is, what makes you optimistic? So Cynthia, may I ask you, what makes you optimistic?
What makes me optimistic is my positive attitude towards life. I always see the world with eyes full of joy and love. And I truly believe in the power of human connection.
And Cheryl, what makes you optimistic?
I would agree. Love makes me optimistic. Love and community, whether it is a connection with the natural world, with our families and our local community, whether it is connection out in the world beyond, but to refocus ourselves onto love, to keep ourselves in a forward motion and optimistic.
It's such a powerful thing. I interviewed women digging ditches in India, in rural roads, and it was either love or faith that was the typical answer when you asked them what makes you optimistic. Now, you know, when I saw in my newspaper clippings the Words of Hope project, I was immediately inspired, and I made contact with you on the same day. So it excites me. But to everyone else watching, Cynthia and Cheryl, tell us what inspired the Words of Hope project.
Okay, I started. Back in March, one day after the International Day of Happiness, was March 21st, one day after, I was sharing, we were in the beginning of the pandemic and everyone was so overwhelmed and stressful with the moment we are living, the beginning of the year. And I shared with Cheryl the idea of this project to bring words of hope to our community, call at the time Hopkinton Beyond, words of hope that connect us in challenging times. So you invite the community. So we will start this idea in March as a seeds of this idea. I share with Cheryl, and you just start a call for poetry and stories in April. If our great surprise, you need stories and poetry for, for uplift our spirits. And then we have, as soon as you post on the website and social media, Victor Perton was the first one to share his poem with us from Australia. How cool it is!
I didn't know I was the first, but
you
can see how I was inspired by you.
Thank you very much. And then like across the world, like, oh, Australia, come on, that's so cool. And I was talking with Cheryl about the first submission, and thank you so much for your submission, by the way. It's really inspiring.
Wonderful.
And then,
God.
Okay. So after that, you have, Cheryl would like to say something?
I think you're telling the story very well. You're missing the detail of, it seemed your own act in the neighborhood was a catalyst first before getting into the anthology project.
So, okay, thank you for remembering me. And this day, one day after the International Day of Happiness, when you start this idea, I decided to do like some small act of kindness with my neighborhood. And I share a little card, bright colors cards, with a note for all my neighbors called, and I wrote about that in this stories in the book, called 124 notes. I printed 124 notes. I put all the mailbox in my neighborhood, and as a surprise. So it was I will share the story now when we're talking, and then you can understand better. This was my first act of kindness and uplift the spirit of my neighbors, because I saw everyone so stressful and overwhelmed. I have to do something for them. And then I preached these 124 notes and spread in my neighborhood. So I read for you the story. This story is in the book. So I will share the story because it tells a little bit about the essence at the beginning of the project. 124 notes. Saturday, March 21st, 2020. Early morning. I wore my disposable gloves. It began my secret mission. Spread happiness in my neighborhood. By the way, you have one neighbor here watching also. Spread happiness in my neighborhood. I have 124 notes in my pocket, printed in different bright colors. I will put them in all the mailboxes around me. The roads were empty in total silence. Ghost town. A police car crosses the street. I hide the cards. Between the smiley face on the top and a heart in the bottom, the words in the note reveal my caring secret. Hi, neighbor. We are all stuck at home, keeping our distance from others, doing our bit to keep our families and the world healthy. Stay positive. Be strong. We are all in this together. Take care of yourself and your family, sending love and help your neighbor. So after that, let's see, I have a little note after, just give me a second. After that, I don't have it here, but after that, I received a note in our Facebook group in our neighborhood. Some neighbors said, thank you so much for this amazing neighbor who put something in my mailbox. It makes my day. It really gave me like encouragement that I need for my life in this moment. So this makes my day, and this makes me so happy. That's a small act for one person. You spread this in our neighborhood, you can spread in our community, and you can spread in our world. This is our idea. And then Cheryl be my partner since then, doing this amazing project.
Yes, yes. We've been a partner in a previous anthology for our town that we did a similar project. And so this one kind of naturally fell together as we have been familiar in that role together as editors. But Cynthia was the one who has a great deal of creative vision and immediately came up with this idea while the rest of us were more stunned about what's going on with pandemic and quarantine.
So this is the book for 2015. Yeah, this is our book for 2015. Hopkinton through poetry. Yeah. So we did this together, and there you're doing again this project, this important year for everyone.
And it's so infectious. We're doing, there's a city called Bendigo, which is Australia's largest inland city. And we're doing a project with them called the Voices of Optimism. And, you know, we've now got the Deputy Prime Minister and political leaders and business leaders and small children all sending in their expressions of optimism to share it. And it becomes so infectious and wonderful. And you lift people. You two, what you're doing is just marvelous. I'm so impressed. Now, can you, because we're a long way away. I mean, I've been to Boston several times for work and family, but I don't think I've ever been to Hopkinton. So tell me about that community.
Cheryl can tell about the community.
Well, it is a wonderful community, in my opinion, and I've been here for 26 years. And I remember the first time walking and seeing Hopkinton was in September, and it was the time of the poly arts, community arts happening in our town on the Hopkinton Common. And by walking in through the pathways and seeing the local artists, the painters, the craftspeople, the musicians even performing, I had a wonderful feeling about the town, that there was a connection and that there was the importance of arts shared within community. And that, in addition to being recommended for its schools at that time, that had me sold in getting involved with the town. And that has been, I think, both of our connection, primarily in the work we do in community is related to arts and connecting with people through spoken word, poetry, storytelling, visual arts. And a number of different organizations Cynthia and I have been involved together over time. So it seems like the natural progression that we would come up with a book calling for the sharing the art of poetry, story, and song lyrics also are included in this book.
Wonderful. So here in Melbourne now, we're now in curfew. So we're actually in a very severe lockdown. We have a curfew from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. We're not allowed to travel more than 5 kilometers from home. Very heavy restrictions around COVID. And I think it happened in your area a little bit earlier. So how did the town respond to those heavy restrictions? What was the spirit?
I know I've been involved with cable television in Hopkinton at HCAM TV. And I know one of the things that happened very quickly after we were in quarantine lockdown in place is that the crew there came together and started brainstorming what they could do to keep connection through the platform of television shows for the people in town. And they would offer a daily TV program at 2 o'clock because everybody was home, and offer different speakers who were talking about how they were doing, what was getting them through, sharing, activities within the home, as well as talking what's going on emergency provision wise, how to help people in town. So a lot of interesting and valuable information was shared through our cable TV for programming. And I also was able to offer a program on Friday nights, as I used to host a program during once a month on Saturday mornings for poetry, story, and song. So this way we transferred it to Zoom, and I would invite a few guests like this to share their art and also talk about the art and what they're doing during pandemic times. So I can offer the TV perspective of what was happening in town. And Cynthia, she was probably either walking around town or running around town because
I'm a runner. So my sister joined us. My sister.
Hello, Roseanne.
Roseanne is my twin sister, 10 minutes older. Sorry, Roseanne. Sorry about that.
You do look very similar.
Yes. So it's a more entertainment for the program. Yeah, I used in the beginning of the pandemic after do this action with my neighborhood because you don't have a lot of people here in our neighborhood, so you can still run and you cannot see nobody. So you see like one person like much more than 6 feet away of you. So I know this loop road so well, 2 miles loop road so well, because I've been running since March, this loop all the time, all the week. No more different ways, just the loop all the time. And also I see, we talk about our community during this pandemic time, I saw a lot of Facebook groups getting together and to help with charities or help support local business. So I saw this, and also when the restaurants open, when they open after the problem, they lock and they cannot open. After they open, I support the local business buying locally and give cheap, like more cheap to help keep the business going. So you're doing our part or a little bit about that. So I saw social media very active, and supporting groups like helping community, helping elders with grocery stores, or just a call for a friend or a senior, or doing something for the others. I saw more solidarity too for people. And I believe, because we talk a lot about the better normal, I believe after this pandemic, you have a better normal for our lives, more solidarity, more connection. I truly believe in that.
Yeah, no, I think it's stunning, I think. And, you know, when we did our research on the better normal, we were getting about 68% of people who could articulate a better normal. But the news limited papers, the Murdoch papers, picked up what we were doing and actually polled their readers. And I think maybe my readers are too critical or engage in too much critical thinking, because 80% of their newspaper readers believed they had a better normal, you know, and it's maybe not commuting in a traffic jam, maybe it's working from home, maybe it's having lunch with the kids instead of, you know, a sandwich at work. It was amazing. So I think you've nailed it. I mean, there's this notion of poetry as a wonderful way of engaging with people and lifting them through this. And Cheryl, as you said, through song lyrics as well. You know, the singing through the pandemic. In fact, I opened a business meeting recently and we all sang. We now make it a ritual of that particular partnership. We sing a song either at the beginning or the end of the meeting. So tell me, how did people respond? I mean, I know I responded first, but how did the rest of the people respond to your call out for poetry in the middle of a pandemic?
We heard from people very quickly. Victor, you were quickest. We heard, you know, we reached out in different ways, and some were through our connections in community art, sending out email recruits and Facebook, and then we went to internet and local newspapers. And so we heard from people locally in community, but we did hear from people in different parts of the country, and then a few outside of the country as well. And it was fast in response. And the request we put out was not to necessarily give something specific to the pandemic, but what can you offer from yourself, your words, and your life that can convey a sense of hope in our collection. And it just a wonderful response. And Cynthia, what is the grand total in our book?
Oh yeah, it's back when you started the project in April, you have more than 120 submissions of poetry and stories for us. By May 31st was our deadline. So we received more than 120 poems and stories, and you selected 72 for the book. And you have a diversity of voices of hope, a diversity of voices, uplifting stories, real stories. You go through how you could be resilient through cancer, or how can you be a pacifist in South Africa and after be a victim of genocide when you were a child and see your parents being killed. How can you become a pacifist and give us a key to hope, give us the key of hope. So our book goes through your poetry, starts with your poetry because of your first submissions, flow through different stories and poems, and finish with you have the key. Is from this pacifist from South Africa, telling us after his experience of life, what he can see hope and become a mission of his life. That's very powerful. It's very emotional. It's very powerful, all the stories you have in this book.
The emotion I had yesterday, I had a leading academic share his case for optimism, and he included his personal cure for, he being cured of cancer. And I had that story from a prisoner, a gang leader who shared it in a group of 20 other prisoners when I was running a session in prison. And he literally moved a couple of these big, strong men they were almost teary. They were so emotional with those stories. So they're very meaningful. So the book will be terrific in continuing to lift people. So you promised me you were going to share 2 or 3 of those pieces of poetry. That
I have one story. My Cheryl has hers. Her story is beautiful. Do you have yours with you, Cheryl?
I do, yeah. So although Cynthia and I typically write poetry, and how we first met each other, we both did submit stories for this anthology. I think that what falls for poetry, what we can offer after. Cynthia, you could read. So this is a story called The Welcoming Dance. And in this anthology, there is a bit of a biography that we provide at the top, and a statement of why we submitted our particular contribution, and telling a little of story and background. And so I decided to write about one of the best moments in my life, when I danced with a perfect stranger. Despite all the division and afflictions we have been facing, this joyful woman and welcoming neighborhood gave me a memory of possibility and hope for all the world to feel more often the important joy of our interconnection. In the summer of 2019, my husband and I were visiting our daughter in the DC neighborhood, where welcoming signs hung from doorways and rainbow flags waved for the Pride Parade that had been taking place that weekend. People would look at you and smile, even ask your name. You like smiles, right, Victor? There were people walking all sizes of smiling dogs. And at one point, a teacher led a chain of small children gripping one long rope across the street, making everyone smile. As we were sitting at the outdoor patio of a cafe, a car stopped in the street just a few feet from our table, emitting loud, pulsating music from the radio. The passenger door opened, and an elegant woman wearing a sleeveless flowing dress with short buzz-cut hair and tattooed arms adorned by jingling silver bangle bracelets stepped out and began dancing in the middle of the street, causing the cafe spectators to smile and some to stand as they watched her dance in ecstatic, unbridled joy. At that moment, a police car pulled up behind her and slowed down. We watched, wondering how she could possibly be reprimanded simply for dancing out so much joy. But no such thing in this love-minded neighborhood, as this ecstatic woman simply danced to one side, leaving enough room for the car to proceed. There was a collective sigh of relief at the cafe as the patrol car drove by. The officer seemed to be smiling. Then this ambassador of dance noticed us. I almost knew what she was thinking as she looked us over and began to dance her way over to our table. Although my husband and daughter were saying no thank you in their minds, I was silently shouting yes in mine. And sure enough, she seemed to have heard as she held her arms out to me to dance. How could I not? It was in that moment an instant state of bliss and an ecstatic celebration of life dance. We were women of different shades of skin. One of us had tattoos, one of us had arms unadorned. We didn't know a thing about each other's lives, but it was as if we were of one body, and it was at once fun, funny, sanctifying, and sacred to share this joy of such a moment of deep felt interconnection. We hugged, and she danced away back to her car. In retrospect, I can't remember any of the details, just the pure, sudden energy of it. I loved that moment of dancing with a perfect stranger. I loved that wonderful dancing woman. I loved the officer in the patrol car, and I loved the smiling people at the cafe. Furthermore, I loved the great privilege of being alive in that moment, dancing and feeling momentary interconnection with everyone and everything. I wish more of these moments for all of the people who share our world house. I wish us all more moments of feeling love for one another and for honoring together the precious gift of breath and dance of life.
That is brilliant. Can I share something funny with you? I have a teenage son, and the other day he challenged me to dance in the street.
Oh.
So I took my iPhone and I played the mamas and the papas dancing in the street. And we live in a quiet neighborhood, but near the beach. And just as I came out, 3 people walked by and I invited them to dance in the street. And of course, 2 of them did, much to my son's horror that his father could be such a lunatic as to be dancing with strangers in the street.
He asked you.
That's a great story.
Yes,
that is so beautiful, Cheryl. I love it.
And did you get that on film for this
No,
program?
no, because I had the in my it was a private moment in a sense that it was just us dancing.
Another thing it's interesting to share also, in May, you heard about one project of photographs called the Front Steps Project. Was happening in, starting in Needham, Massachusetts, with a photographer who had an idea. She had an idea to take pictures of the families in their front steps of their houses. And the money for these photos, just all the money goes to charity, local charities, and to help the community in some way. So you invite 3 photographers from Southborough, towns in Massachusetts, Southborough, Hopkinton, and Framingham is a city. In Framingham, you invite them to share some of these photos with us in our project. So you have photos in our book, you see photos of families and like a single mom, you see family full of children, dogs, cats, you see all different people in front of their houses, donating their money to charity, helping their communities, and makes the sense of really a truly community is, because they are helping, all the money go to charity also. So the families are helping, they are going outside. So it's the moment everyone was in the pandemic, oh, I cannot go outside. So they go with more than 6 feet distance. They just go there and take a picture, and the money all goes to charity too. So we have 20 photos in our book for this project with these 3 amazing photographers. And you'll be in our book, you call like words and images in response to a global pandemic. That's the Hope True community, because you have the images as the photos and you have the words of people in our project.
One person I must introduce you to at some point is a friend of mine from New York called Judy Rogers, who, like you, Cheryl, is a journalist, but has decided that the news is too negative and created an organization called the Images and Voices of Hope.
Oh.
So I'd love to introduce Judy to. I was online with her on Friday night because she works as well with an Indian group called the Future of Power. And Judy moderated the event. We had people from all over the world, you know, sharing the future of power, which is all about imaging and voices and stories of hope. So Cynthia, what is your favorite piece that's going into the anthology?
You cannot ask us this because you're editors. You cannot ask this. You put me in a bad situation.
Right. I'll ask you to share one, as Cheryl did.
You brought one, Cynthia, didn't you?
I can share. I have my story. I can share another one. Which one, Cheryl?
Well, I thought you were going to share the first page, the first one.
Oh, I know. I have a famous poet from Australia. They're separated here to read to you, called Victor Perton. I don't know if you know him. His poem is The Times Call for Realistic and Infectiously Optimistic Leaders. The leader is the person in your mirror. Thank you, Victor. You were surprised with your poem.
I was inspired. My son studies Japanese, and of course they have those 3-line poems. So I thought I could go 2 lines.
It's perfect for open the book. It's our mirror because you make a difference. So I think it's perfect. Yeah.
We're all looking. When can we expect the book to be in print?
We're still working on it, right, Cynthia? We're almost done.
We're editing and formatting right now, finishing the introduction because I like to choose the correct words to deliver the book. And probably we're going to the publisher this week, and the book will be published in December.
Well, I have
be available on Amazon.
Inspired by the two of you. We're actually launching a new show on Sunday called The Optimist Heart. And it's we did a show the other day with an Australian Aboriginal academic who was a bit skeptical about us at the beginning of the show. And then halfway through, he said, look, I don't know if you guys can even put it into words, but what you're doing with optimism makes complete sense to me now. So we're very much about this optimism of the heart, the spirit, the land, the space. And so you have utterly inspired me today. You have been so, so generous joining us.
And my young sister.
So Roseanne, do you have a question to ask your sister?
Do you have, Roseanne?
Yes, I would like to ask her and Cheryl, do you get launch this book before Christmas?
Oh, for sure. The book will be available on Amazon and with us and the Damiano's Publishing in the beginning of December. So you'll have this book by Christmas season. So perfect present for Christmas.
We'll make sure there's enough time to ship it to Australia.
I don't know how many days it takes.
At the moment, it takes a long time, but it'll get quicker again. Because of course, there's no passenger planes. You know, all the Qantas planes, the big A380s are sitting in the desert at Victorville in California, and their Boeing 747s have been tried. So there's no passenger freight. So it's created quite a different dynamic to delivery. It's fascinating. Now, Noireen has joined us. Now, Noireen, you would love her project. Her project is called
Our Project.
Optimism Project.
Our project, Victor. It's our project.
And we're creating an online course for free for the world on the habits of the optimist. So, Noireen, I have been utterly inspired by these ladies. Have you got a question to ask?
Well, actually, I had a comment, really. Hope, for me, is the biggest ingredient for optimism. So I just love what you guys are doing, Cheryl and Cynthia. I just love it. I just love it. Because I think, especially in these times globally, I think that people don't want to be told, oh, you know, be grateful for stuff. I mean, that's important. I get all of that. But I think they need hope to go forward because it's difficult and it's hard for everyone. And I think what's most practical, most needed, and most helpful is to be told, go forward and hope. And hope for me is optimism.
Perfect.
My mom is a very happy person. I think it's our DNA is like that. The positiveness in all the things come to my family. It's our DNA. You're always smiling. It's like
25% is genetics and 75% is a decision.
Yes.
But the smile is so important. The number one habit of the optimist is smiling to yourself, smiling to family, and smiling to strangers.
Oh,
and
yeah,
of course,
I
that's my I have a mask on when I go out.
No, it's hard.
I think one thing that's interesting from our project also is that when we started hearing from people, we began to receive a spectrum of representation of what people considered hope in their poems and stories. And so we didn't know what to expect at first, but we anticipated it would be uplifting words. And what we received, you know, is just like there are so many different kinds of human beings with different experiences and stories, lived experience, and voices. And that's what we've heard. And I think the compilation of all of that is really important too, that you can't box hope into one specific outlook, way of looking at things, that there are many different ideas we can get from people about hope that can inspire and hold us, perhaps uplift us, make us think. You know,
Cheryl,
whether
I so agree with you. And you know, optimism is the same. I mean, ask Victor. He's asked thousands and thousands of people about what makes them optimistic. And I believe, Victor, that no one answer has been the same. Is that correct?
Exactly. Unless it's one word. Sometimes if it's in Hindi or the like, or dialect in India where it's been translated, sometimes we've had one word, you know, it might be God or family, but where it goes beyond 4 words, not one has been the same. But I'll share my favorite with you guys. My favorite is from a neuroscientist at the University of Melbourne. And her answer in the end was, optimism is the evidence for dreams not yet realized.
Oh.
It's the first time you look at it, you think, oh, and then you suddenly think, oh my God, what wisdom. This is a woman who studies the brain.
That's amazing.
But we had the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea and all sorts of people doing tough jobs. And what's interesting is whenever we ask them what makes you smile, what makes you optimistic, they light up.
It's true.
So one of our ambassadors in Latin America, in a country next to Lanita's country, the ambassador is a woman of about 50, and she said to me, Victor, I am 50. You are the first person ever to ask me about my optimism. And then she shared this wonderful, provocative thinking. She'd been storing it up for 45 years. So you too are liberating people's hopes and souls. I mean, you are the ultimate liberators.
True. When I was young, I share the story in my teenager years with the elders in the city that I live. I moved to Hopkinton, Victor, in October 2012 for United States, October 2012 for Hopkinton, January 2013. So I live here for a little more than 7 years. And then this time I learned English. So I learned English here. I met Cheryl in 2013. So we become friends. And one of the stories that I share with her about the way of see the life with like eyes full of joy and love is when I was a teenager, 16 years old in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil. I used to see people or seniors, elders crossing the street with like a face are not so happy or they are sad. And I just stole some roses from the garden, but that's not good, but well, I just cut the roses and I thought, I think I can change his life if I give him or her a flower. And I just came with my 16 years old, I came to them and say, oh, this flower is for you. Oh, they are surprised. It coming like a young lady coming to give them a flower. But they opened a beautiful and amazing smile that I believe I changed their days that day. So as I say, it could be a little small act of kindness or generosity or solidarity. And you're changing people's lives and bringing happiness to them. So this is my way just to share a story that just come to my mind now.
And they remember that for the rest of their lives. The young woman who gave them a flower on the street. It's not something that happens every day. People literally remember that for the rest of their lives.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. It's true. And
where did you guys go? It's been, because it's getting late at night where you are. Whereas here, of course, it's lunchtime and our tummies are rumbling.
It's almost 10 p.m.
So thank you so much for joining us.
Victor, I, in closing, noticed the nice lighthouse behind you, and I noticed what you said in talking about optimism, people light up. And I think that's important reference in thinking about optimism as it is in hope and other things that keep us lifted and strong going forward is the importance of light in our life.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that conversation and We'd love you to be involved with the Centre for Optimism and share, these wonderful conversations that we've had today with Cynthia and Cheryl and their wonderful project of hope.